Hi, everybody. It is November 9th, 2022. It's 10 a.m. And I want to welcome you to the Basics of Borrowing with the Loan Fund webinar. My name is Christopher Garcia, and I'm going to be coordinating this webinar in the background. So if something goes wrong or you can't hear me or something, you're free to chat. And let me make sure I have that on. Attendees can chat with host and panelists. Yes, you can. And before we begin, I'd like to go over some webinar ground rules. We are recordings, and this webinar will be posted on YouTube. So give me a few days after the webinar, and I will send it out to everybody who's registered for this webinar. If you have a question, you could put it into the Q&A portion on the bottom of your screen. And just to make sure the Q&A is working, I like to ask everybody to put hi, hello, how are you into the Q&A. Hi, Hillary. Hello, Corina. Good morning, Toby. Hello, Michael. Hi, April. Hello, Shauna. Hola, Stephen. Hello, Shannon. Hi, Art. And hello, Angela. And let's see, I got another. Hello, Bonnie. So everybody seems like they could use the Q&A. Let me get rid of the highs real fast. And then I did send everybody a document yesterday. I'm going to chat it out right now. Let me chat it out to everyone. Let me find it on my computer. Let me put it in the chat. And it's the name of the document is 19 Business Plan. And it's a Word document. And I see Mr. Pacheco. Hi, Mr. Pacheco. Let me make you a co-host so you could share your screen. Put the document in the chat. And please, can you raise your hand for me if you receive the document in the chat? Open my participants. Perfect. You guys are zooming pretty well. I'm glad you got the document in the chat. I will send it out again after the webinar when I send the recording out, but I wanted to make sure you had it today. And I want to welcome you to the Basics of Borrowing with the Loan Fund. We have our distinguished panelist, Mr. Leroy Pacheco. He's the president and CEO of the Loan Fund. And I will turn it over to you, Mr. Pacheco.
Buenos dias, Mr. Christopher. How are you guys?
Oh, we're doing great. I'm glad to have one of our nonprofit lenders here to give information about what you do.
Well, we're excited. Again, I also share my time as an advisory board member for the Small Business Development Centers for the last 16 years. Christopher, also want to thank you for the loans that you send us. We've been able to help a lot of people around the state. The latest one was down there, very successful. A couple of nurses that started that wellness center down in Belen. And just to let you know, they're doing just fantastic. I think you and I were down there a few years ago for a ribbon cutting, but they're just doing great. I wanted to take a few minutes and again, basically talk about the loan fund for those of you that don't know the loan fund, and then give you some tips on a couple things on steps on starting a business. And also, but first let me tell you a little bit about the loan fund, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what we require when you come to see us. And you know, we lend, Christopher, about $1 million a month, and loans as small as $5,000 to a gentleman who wanted to buy some cones and some lights and put them on his truck and escort oversized vehicles around the state of New Mexico. We lent him that money, and within 9 months he paid us back. We also have a couple of clients that have come to us from the SBDC who started with a $30,000 loan, $50,000 loan 5, 6, 7 years ago. And today, and they had 2 employees. Today they have 52 employees. They have $1 million line of credit with us, and they're probably going to do $10.5 million a year and just join the SBA 8A program. So we have all types of businesses. We lend to welders, musicians, electricians, clowns, hair salons, nail salons, restaurants, you name it. If you're around the state of New Mexico and you're listening, you're down in Las Cruces, go by Nueva Casita, go by Taqueria Chavez, go by Palateria Michoacan, go by the Beverly Hill Town Hall, the Pettis Brothers. If you're up in Taos, go see Casa Valdez. If you're in Cuesta, go see the Wildcats Den restaurant. If you're up in Angel Fire, go see the Black Lake Roasters, the Jaramillo Brothers. If you're down in Deming, Silver Cities, drop in and see Christina Montoya, Montoya Bus, who's probably one of the largest bus contractors in the state of New Mexico. So Chris, I wanted to spend a little bit of time with those that are listening right now and then leave some time for some questions about starting a business. And I think you have these are at the SBDC. I believe you have those. And if you don't have them, Chris, I'll make them available to you. But there's the basics of starting a business. Very, 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 very simple. And I hope, Chris, maybe I know you have these here, and if you don't, I'll send you one. They're the basic starts of a business. How to make sure you're licensed properly, that you have the right certificates, that you've registered with the city or the county or the state of New Mexico. Do you need a federal ID number? Those type of things. Make sure you're correct. Make sure you register for your CRS number for gross receipts tax. We get so many people come in here and they go, what is CRS? I didn't know I had to pay that. Oh, I wasn't sure I had to collect that. So get started correctly so that you don't dig yourself a hole when you're first starting out. Chris, we do lend to startup businesses, which some banks and credit unions do not, but we do. But we're not sitting here looking at a $200,000 or $300,000. We just had a gentleman walk in and wanted $400,000 for a startup business, and just way too much. I just got off another Zoom a little while ago, and the lady's project went to $800,000, and every bank she's gone to says that she has to come up with money. So now she's looking for more money. Well, you can look for more money or get a partner or get some additional collateral. We have many loans that are co-signed by mother, father, uncle, brother, strong partner, and etc. So sometimes it's not a matter of the collateral and how much you have, but maybe the strong personal financial statement or the partner that you might have. So on starting a business, have your act together. The other thing that I sent you, I think, Chris, was if you got those, is, do I need a business plan? And Chris will tell you right now. Well, it's like driving at night with no lights on. Either you're going to hit somebody because they don't know where you're going, or they're going to hit you because you don't know where you're going, or they don't know where you're at. So yes, and very simple business plan. I think we sent that out, Chris, that you can show as an attachment.
We did.
Who are you? What do you want to do? Where are you going to do it? When do you want to do it? And usually the how is with Leroy or Christopher's money. So very simple. Take 5 sheets of paper out and start writing down in there, who are you? Tell me who you are. Give me your resume. Tell me how you learned to make tortillas or welding or driving a rig. Show me who you are. Character is very, very important when we're lending money. What do you want to do? Half of our businesses don't have a storefront. Half of our businesses work out of their homes. And they are architects, they're plumbers, they're electricians, contractors. They make tortillas, they make honey, they make salsa, but they don't have a storefront. So again, what do you want to do? Where are you going to do it? And then when do you want to do it? Probably a third of our businesses, Christopher, drive a bus for the city or work for a restaurant, but they're architects or landscapers or musicians on the weekend or in the summer or on, in the evenings. And our goal is to, wouldn't you like to be being a musician 100% of the time versus driving a bus for the city? Not that that's bad. So we help people build their capacity on their businesses. And sometimes it takes a number of years, a number of steps before we're able to provide the right, what I call financial medication. But one of the things, Chris, and I think that's on the other sheet that we showed you about, is who's doing your bookkeeping? Do you have an accountant? Do you need a bookkeeper? We'll give you a name. What kind of legal structure do you have? Are you a partnership, a sole proprietor, a subchapter S, regular C corporation? Everybody has to have some kind of legal structure. What kind of insurance do you require? Who is your insurance agent? Who is your broker? The next one, Chris, is where you help a lot of people because you're great at marketing, is how do I find you? Radio, TV, newspapers. Some people put a sign out in the front of their restaurant and they think they're advertising. They're not reaching anybody because everybody's driving by 50 miles an hour. And they're not going to stop for a $9.95 chimichanga when they don't see it. So the other one is people come to us and they haven't separated Chris Garcia from Chris Garcia LLC. And then I get bank statements and they have Chewy.com and Pampers, Walgreens. And, you know, I'm not going to sit there and separate what your business assets are, your business expenses are from your personal. So those are 5 things that you can do that can really, really help us when we're looking at your financial statements and your personal financial statement. The other form I think I sent you, Chris, was some very important documents that seem to hold people back when they're trying to borrow money.
You want me to share it on the screen?
Would you please? Those would be really, really great, Christopher, because I think it's really important. Here's what I just talked about right there was the partners that need you to have. Who's your accountant? Who's the attorney? What kind of legal structure? Who's your insurance agent? Advertising? How do I find you? And banking, have you separated? Here's the form I'm talking about here. You should have a file, a cabinet somewhere. Put your resume in there because that tells me who you are, who you've worked for, where you've gotten your experience from. You know, you can all right now, you could call, do www.annualreport.com, creditreport.com and get a credit report free. Second, if you have a degree, a certificate, a GB98 license, you should have a copy of that. You should have your personal financial statement up to date and your last 2 to 3 years of personal tax returns. If you own a company, you have one, you should have your most current company financial statement and the last 2 to 3 years of returns. Here's the other things too. If you have a health insurance policy, where is it? If you have a life insurance policy, where is it? If you have an IRA or 401k, where is it? What's the number? What do you have? If you have some business credit cards, you should have the statements separated and the balances. If you have been published, if you have been in the radio, you have been on TV, you've made some personal experiences, have a copy of those. If you are members of the Hispano Chamber of Commerce, if you're on the Small Business Commission, if you're on a particular committee someplace, let us know because that talks about who you are. And these are some things, Chris, that people need to keep current all the time, even if they're not trying to borrow any money right now. And
Exactly.
someday they may. Go down this last one. This is another one. This is one I just went through. Very, very simple. People ask me if they need a business plan. I go, well, I don't know. What do you do? Who are you? And so sit down, and now Chris has helped a lot with this. Who are you? Take a sheet of paper and tell me who you are. And then tell me what you want to do, when you're going to do it, where, and how you're going to get it done. And usually it's with our money, but a very simple business plan. And I think those of you that are listening out there, please go to loanfund.org, loanfund.org. You can hear and read more about the Loan Fund and what we've done. You're going to see pictures in there of if you're around town. Here's another one that Chris, I like to go to a couple times a week. Dorado Bakery, right on the corner of Broadway and Gibson. Came to us 15 years ago or so and said he put an horno in this little building and started making his bolillos and making tamales and etc. Now he has 2 different locations and he's just one of the most fantastic restaurateurs, best burritos, best tamales that you can taste. We also lend to nonprofits, which a lot of people do not lend to. We do. We just lend an organization called La Puerta, $1.2 million to buy a building that they've been leasing for the last 10 years or so. So we do lend to nonprofits. We do business startups. We do an awful lot of succession loans. This is where grandpa and dad want to hand the business to their daughter or their cousin or their uncle. And so I've got 2 or 3 generations of people that I'm looking at. So we do generational loans. I don't lend to Walgreens and Smiths and Home Depot. I lend to the corner grocery store, the corner gas station, the 2 nurses in Berlin that saved up $60,000, went to see Chris, got a business plan put together. 2 years later, they own their own building. They have a wellness clinic in Berlin, and they're just knocking it out of the park, Christopher. And so if it's well planned and strategized, this is what we try and help businesses do. In the last 30 years, Chris, this organization has lent out $113 million and created over 12,000 jobs throughout the state of New Mexico. And we are a nonprofit 501c3. We also are an SBA micro lender. For those of you that are listening out there right now, I have several $1 million for loans of $50,000 and below from the SBA micro loan program. And so if you're interested in a loan of $50,000 with an SBA micro loan, please give us a call. Again, go to loanfund.org. There's even our applications are also, and I don't know, again, loanfund.org. We could probably put the website up on the chat. I think Christopher just put it on there, www.loanfund.org. We do business loans, small business loans. We do gas stations, nail salons, grocery stores. I even lent money to a lady who bought a bus, one of these little small school buses, took the seats out of it and turned it into Bunny the Clown. And she takes this nut around and does birthday parties with an old bus and $5,000 of her money and $10,000 from the loan fund. So we lend to clowns. We lent a gentleman money to buy a car so he could drive from Espanola to Buffalo Thunder to do his gigs there at night. So we are good financial doctors. We've been here 30 years. I have 3 great loan officers. If you have any questions whatsoever, and Chris, I'll kind of maybe cut it here and leave it open for questions or comments and see how you want to handle it. I can tell you a whole bunch more about me if you are interested, and more about the loan fund. You can look at our website and learn everything that you want here. For those of you that are out there right now, and Christopher, I'm glad you keep inviting me back year after year. There are 17 or 18 locations of the small business development centers around the state. We use them a lot. We use Joanne Garay down in Las Cruces. We use Ms. Martinez up in Espanola. You know, we go there if you need some help. They will help you structure a business plan. They will help you with projections. They will help you putting together a financial package before you spend a lot of time. They might even share it with us before you come to see us. So Christopher, again, I think one of the things that maybe you can get out right now is all the help that's available free of charge by the small business development centers.
Oh, sure.
I'll keep talking, Chris. I'll turn it over to you.
Let me tell you a little bit about what the SBDC does. So we're here to help build skilled entrepreneurs and strong businesses through 2 methods. We have no-cost confidential counseling and lower no-cost workshops and webinars like this one. And we depend on our partners like the Loan Fund, SCORE, West, the Small Business Administration in order to find financing for people, help people write business plans. And we have access to a lot of business research, and we have financial projection spreadsheets. The Loan Fund puts together that nice business plan. It's only 3 pages. It's less daunting than my 25-page business plan. But both are good. And as long as we address all the questions asked, you have a good chance. But you got to make sure you're lender ready, you're credible, and you have experience in that industry. And now I'll open the Q&A. Let's see. April asks, do you loan to people opening a franchise as a franchisee?
Yes, we do. It just depends on how much you want. It depends on how much the franchise is. And it depends on what the collateral is. Does anything come with the franchise other than the name? I mean, we've done a donut store franchise. We've done Subway sandwich shops. Yes, we've done franchises. And the same thing, how much of your money are you putting into this? Are you trying to borrow 100%? It's going to be really difficult. If the franchise is $30,000, do you at least have that money for the franchise? Then maybe I have the rest of the money for the equipment or whatever else you need to do the franchise. So we do franchise. We've done Subway sandwich shops. Biggest loan that we did, and it was not really a franchise, was 5-Star Burgers here in that was $500,000 that we did to a Nigerian Nicaraguan immigrant who'd been running the store for 15 years. And you know how we put that one together? We had the seller co-sign the loan for his valued employee who'd been with him for 14 years. So he got in with no money, but I got the owner of the restaurant to co-sign the note. How do you like that? So that person got that 5-star burger franchise for no money out of their pocket, but I got the seller to co-sign the note because it was his favorite employee and his employee didn't have any money. So we look at ways to try and make a loan. It's easy to say no. It's very easy to say no. If I look at your credit score and it's a negative 400, if I take a look at your 74 Maverick and it's missing a headlight, I take a look at your toaster oven and it only works on low. I take a look at your TV and it's only a black and white. Well, I take all of that for collateral if that's what you've got. So you got to be able to put up something. But if you're buying a franchise, yes. Have you saved up any money? Do you know about the franchise? Have you done anything to experience yourself as what that franchise, whether it's selling donuts, cookies, whatever that franchise is you're buying? But we do lend to franchises, yes.
Perfect. Do you loan outside of New Mexico or only inside of New Mexico?
You know what? We've been asked years ago, Chris, to go to Texas, to go to Colorado, to go. Francis Padilla called us from Colorado, says, "But we really would love to have you." Edward the Canena called me from Las Vegas, Nevada. "We really could use you guys up over here." You know, I would be living out of a suitcase for the next 20 years or so. There is so much demand here in New Mexico, Chris, you know that. There is such a want for capital. We don't need to go anywhere outside of these borders. We have gone to our board every year and go, "Do you want us to expand? Do you want us to turn into a credit union? Do you want us to turn into a bank?" We're staying as a 501c3 nonprofit, lending from border to border, from Santa Teresa to Angel Fire, you know, to Roswell, to Tucumcari. We just did a hotel in Tucumcari, $200 and some thousand from somebody, but just New Mexico.
And if you weren't a nonprofit, you have experience in private banking. What would a private banker tell you if you had no money and wanted to buy a franchise like that?
What can I tell you? No. You know, I sat on 4 or 5 different banks, and banks are great. They're profit-making oriented. Credit unions are nonprofit, but you got to make some money. But they are nonprofit credit unions. Credit unions are finally starting to lend to businesses. You know, before they were just taking care of their shareholders, you know, pretty much. Banks right now, try and go to a bank right now. The rates just went up, I think, a couple of points. It's tough. What used to cost you 5% is now costing you 8%. So, you know, you come to see us. We're very fortunate, Christopher, right now that we went out and secured another $30 million over the last couple of years in capital. And in 2 years, I haven't lent any money out above 4.75%. Okay, 4.75%. And I have that money available now, and I have about $2 million worth of SBA microloan money for loans under $50,000 available.
And can you share your current rates for fixed or variable loans?
Well, we don't have variable loans. We don't make off. This is another thing too that I'm from banking. Variable rates are the biggest enemy of small businesses. I don't know if you remember years ago, mortgage rates, we have an adjustable rate mortgage, you know, and so Christopher goes in at 1.25 and he qualifies, great. All of a sudden, 5 years later, it's 6.75 and his payments are 3 times as much. He can't pay for the mortgage. Adjustable rate mortgages, we use fixed rates only. And right now we're lending from our best rate at 3.75 to about 7. Just depending on the collateral, depending on the risk, depending on the amount, and depending on whether it's a 2-year, 3-year, or 10-year, or 20-year loan, and depending what it's secured by. If it's secured by a 74 Mavic versus 22 Lexuses, 2022s, the rate's probably going to be a little bit higher.
Perfect. Corina asks, do you lend to consolidate loans as well as to expand, like adding a vehicle?
You know what? That's a real good question, because I think we have 4 or 5 of the best financial doctors that I've ever worked with in my last 40 or 50 years. We have some really good, talented people that can look at your balance sheet, your income statement, your aging of receivables, your aging of payables, all of your debt, and go, you know what, Christopher, if we were able to take this and combine these, get that new truck that you want, put it into one loan, put it on a 15-year amortization instead of everything on a 5-year amortization, and lower your payments by $1,000 a month. So we do restructure loans. We have also gone back and helped people with they show up with a credit bureau that looks like a Christmas tree. You know, I'm going, are you paying anybody? I don't want to be the next one on your credit bureau. So we've told people, go take care of this bad credit, or tell me which are your bad credit, and I'll lend you the money to pay your bad credit and your collection items before we take another step. Does that make sense? We've helped repair people's credit. We've lent to people with really, I mean, our biggest bus contractor came to us, I think, with a 438 credit score. And her dad had just bought a bus company for $800,000, and they closed the freaking schools in Baird Cobre. Now you look at that financial statement, and let me tell you, but you know what? 15 years later, that lady now is the largest bus contractor in southern New Mexico, because we took a chance on her and she did everything we told her to do with the bad credit or the credit she had. So yes, we're really good at restructuring loans and try to put a package together. And I practice this, Chris. We have what's called patient funding. I want my money back. Not that I don't care when I get it back, but I just want to get it back. And if your cash flow doesn't show that you can pay me $1,500 a month, then I'm going to do it at $1,000 a month. And that might make the amortization a little bit longer. So to me, it's not that I don't care that I get it back within 5 years or 7 years or whatever. I just want to get it back sometime. So as our financial doctors will try and structure a payment that will work. Sometimes it's interest only for the first year, in order to give you time to get your sales up, to use your trucks or whatever, and then we put you on a monthly payment. So we're very, very patient regarding how we want our money back.
Perfect. Shauna asked, do you loan to businesses on tribal reservations?
Yes, we have 101 just did a really wonderful, got a really nice award. Years ago, we, Shai Lucero, Earth and Sky, whatever, she's the only Native American flower shop in the entire United States at Laguna. Shai Lucero, that was a loan we made 15 years ago. And so we do lend to tribal, we also lend to tribal entities and tribal owned businesses and et cetera. Mm-hmm.
Is collateral an issue for a lot of tribal owned businesses?
It's a, you know what, Chris, that's a great question. It's an issue for every freaking business. I don't care if it's tribal, individual, whatever, like collateral is always the issue. This is why there's a, for us, we've been able to use the state's economic development program, the CAP program, collateral assistance program. We've used that with a couple of restaurants. If you're not familiar with that, you can look it up under the economic development. I know Chris has information on it. They provide up to $250,000, 50%. If you're short on collateral, I can apply to them to come up and shore up the collateral with a certificate of deposit. I have one restaurant that we lent them $250,000. We had too many toaster ovens and tortilla makers, and we got an $80,000 collateral assistance program certificate of deposit on their behalf for the next 3 to 5 years. So we use, there it is right there, the collateral assistance program. It's a wonderful one. And we use that program a lot. In fact, we have 2 loans right now. You'll see the loan fund right there. We have 2 loans right now that we're asking for collateral assistance on to make the structured loan work for us.
So what the
So
what the state does is, if you were qualified for that program, they'll take out a financial instrument of some sort to kind of guarantee your loan?
Yes. Right now, I think they might even just be guaranteeing it up to a certain dollar amount. You know what I mean? They might be signing on it. Whether Joanna Nelson signs that, I'm not sure who does it, but we just did one now where they actually put a certificate of deposit in our name for X number of dollars. It just depends on how they want to handle it and how much cash they have, I think.
Perfect. Let me see. I got some questions in the chat. Michael asks, he says, I have a karaoke company that has done gigs in New Mexico since 2019. Is intellectual property part of collateral?
It always is. What kind of value we put on it that's what's called goodwill, I think. That's what's called, you know, making a better tortilla than the next person because you use lard instead of gluten-free something. I mean, I don't know. We take a look at anything and everything. Again, we're not a real collateral lender. We are a cash flow lender. You got to show me, if I'm going to lend you $50,000 for your karaoke business, what are you going to do with it? Are you buying more equipment? Are you just using it because you don't have enough gigs and you need to live? I mean, you know, what do you need the line of credit for? What do you need the money for? So we always take a look at what is our money going to do to your business? One of our mission, we're again a mission-driven organization, Christopher. We were started in 1989 with a $100,000 loan from the Adrian Dominican Sisters. Okay, from the Adrian Dominican Sisters. At that time, they started Habitat for Humanity, the Storehouse, Samaritan Counseling Center, all under the New Mexico Conference of Churches. You know, today we're a $35 million organization. We paid the nuns back their $100,000 after 30 years, right? And we've amassed $50 million worth of lending capital. So we have the capital. We're looking for good investments. So when you come to see us, make sure you got your business plan together. Make sure you've got all your financial statements correct, verified, signed, whatever. Make sure, don't come and see Christopher and I with 6 of the things that out of the 10 that we asked you for. Because Chris is gonna say, well, let's see, I don't know your blood type. I don't know your cholesterol level. Not exactly sure what your blood pressure is. Christopher, let's get the wand, not the little magic wand, the big magic wand.
Oh, the big one.
Because the first thing they say is, what do you think, Christopher? How long do loans like this take? Well, let me get started. So be prepared. That list that I gave you there, let me tell you what, I always tell people right now, even if you don't need money today, get one of our applications, fill it out so that you know what you're going to need, whether you go to a bank, a credit union, somewhere else, you're going to have the same information. So save yourself some time, pre-fill out an old application so that you know how long it takes, what it takes, and then attach all the documents. And if you don't have them, don't come and see me. Because if you're my brother or even my uncle, I will turn you down if you don't have what Christopher and I need in order to try and structure a good loan for you. Again, one of the things that I pride ourselves in, Christopher, and you've helped us with this, we have a 98% repayment rate. Well, after 30 years, all right? It's not my repayment rate. It's the people that Christopher has sent us. It's the people that borrowed our money, have a good accountant, they have good insurance, they have a good business plan, they've separated their business from their personal, they advertise well, they know where they get their people, they pay their bills, they control their costs, and we've helped them build capacity. That's one of our, as a mission-driven organization, ours is a mission-driven to build financial capacity. And let me tell you what you and I have been doing for years. We've been balancing business, family, and culture. That book, did I send you that book?
No.
Business? Okay, I'm going to send you a book that was written by one of your colleagues, one of our colleagues. And I have this available. And it's a bilingual workbook, balancing business, family, and culture. And written by Christopher.
Oh, Dr. Lozano, Marvin
Dr.
Lozano and his
Lozano
wife.
and Dr. Rivera. Okay, this is a bilingual workbook. Okay, for those of you that want to hone your Spanish skills, for those English ones, whether Spanish is your first language, whatever, but it's what you and I do every day. We balance business, family, and culture. How do you tell your grandma she's not making good tortillas? How do you fire your second cousin because he's stealing from you? How do you tell your third cousin that she needs to come in a little bit early to your business? So I don't lend to Walgreens, Home Depots, and etc. I lend to family businesses. And when you have a family business, there are different things than if you work for Walgreens or Home Depot or you own Intel. So these are things we pride ourselves in, that we know how to talk to family-owned businesses. Michael
also asked, do we get to meet with you in person for loan consideration? Yeah, and you do exist in real life.
Real life, this is not an image. When we get an application, or you call us or you fill out an application, we'll get you with me or a loan officer or somebody, or together like this. This afternoon I have another one it's a 3-way Zoom with one of my loan officers, myself, and the client, because the client wanted to include me in the conversation, and we are. So we'll make ourselves available to you. But if you just follow the instructions on our application, that will give us enough information to call you back right away. And that's usually what we've done, Christopher. If we get something, we try and call the client back right away and just say, okay, I'm looking at your application here. You didn't add up. One of the biggest mistakes that people do, Christopher, when they fill out their personal financial statement, we ask them about cash value of life insurance. They don't put the cash value, they put the face value. So no, I don't want $1 million. What the cash value is probably $25,000. So we help people fill out their financial statements correctly. We help people. If you haven't done your tax returns for 2 years, you're not going to get anything from us, but we can maybe get you to somebody to help you get your tax returns up to date, to get your financials up to date. So it's always really important. This is why those 3 pages that you just put out to the people on there, if you just follow those instructions, like when you get to one where it says partners, if you don't have an accountant, we'll give you 3 bookkeepers' names. If you don't have an attorney, we'll give you 3 attorneys. If you don't have an insurance broker, we'll give you the name of 3 insurance brokers, because you're going to need these. So as we go through there, we want to make sure that you get started correctly. And thank you for sending those facts on how to start a business. Let's make sure you're started correctly, legally, and then let's make sure that we're like a refueling station, Christopher, you know that, right? We're like a gas station. I've looked at some people's financials and I go, shoot, you're going to Alamogordo, you ain't going to come back because you don't have enough gas. So let me help you by creating a line of credit so you can get 3 tanks of gas in Socorro to make sure you can come back from Alamogordo. Those are the things that we try and help businesses with, is planning, strategy, and cash flow.
And you are located in the historic Barreras neighborhood, right?
We're in Barreras too, and I have a loan officer in Las Cruces, and I have another one up in Santa Fe. So we cover the whole state of New Mexico. I have 3 other loan officers here in Albuquerque. So we got plenty of people, plenty of doctors for you to talk to. I recommend that when you get an application or you get something like this, call our office, tell us that you have it ready. Maybe we can get it to you to scan it, email it to us before you spend a trip, before you come in and visit with us. I can find out whether or not you're ready. It's like going to the doctor without your x-rays, without your blood type, without your health plan. And then you ask him, what do you think, Christopher? How long will this take? Well, shoot, I don't have anything to work with. So be fair to yourself and be good to yourself when you're looking for money.
And then our next question comes from Yvonne. She's an existing business and she wants to know if she could take out some money for marketing, and wants to know if you'd need a marketing plan before the application can go through.
Well, first, if she fills out the application, it tells me what she needs the money for. She needs money for working capital, whether it's going to be a marketing plan or doing something else. I mean, we sometimes set up little small lines of credit. I have one that we just set up 25,000 lines of credit for, because they don't know how they're going to use money, where they're going to use their money. And then when they call us, they said, this is Christopher, would you please put $10,000 in my account? I'm going to hire so-and-so, or I'm going to get these materials. So we monitor how they're using their money. If it's for working capital, it's for, hey, I'm hiring 2 guys and I want to have the payroll for 2 months. Be very specific on how you're going to use your money. And we will lend you the money according to those draws. We probably have, Christopher, $5 or $6 million of lines of credits for different businesses right here. Some as small as $10,000 and some as large as $1 million.
And just as a follow-up to that, I would suggest you have a marketing plan finished, even if it's a 1 piece of paper with the 3 things that you're going to purchase to do marketing with. You know,
go see Christopher. Christopher's a marketing guru. He has researched, I think, better than any SBDC that I work with, how to market your business, where to market your business, whether I use Twitter, TikTok, Twizzle, Twipple, whatever's out there, social media, whatever it is to market your business. Christopher can help you in that. And a marketing plan, yeah, a marketing plan is a marketing plan. Marketing strategy is, it's like we're going to the moon, but first we're going to Mars, then we're going here. That's a strategy. A marketing plan tells me how you're going to market, who you're going to try and reach. Now tell me the strategy. Where are you going to start? You're going to start here. You're going to start there. You're going to start big. You're going to start newspapers. That's a strategy. So marketing plan and a marketing strategy would be very helpful.
And Pilar asks, do you loan to tax preparation and bookkeeping businesses?
Yes, I have probably 25 CPAs, tax people. If you need one, I got some. If you're looking for a bookkeeper, something like that, but we look to accounts. I just did another one, very large one right now for $250,000. A guy bought another practice out. And so he's now twice the bookkeeper that he was before. And now he bought the company he bought, now he can do audits. So yes, we do lend to bookkeeping and accounting companies.
Perfect. Corina asks, can you talk about attorney and legal help as well as the accountant responsibility and assistance?
Yeah, the attorney help is just one. Everybody needs some type of legal structure. Now, if you want to operate as a sole proprietor, that's fine. But if you're taking a look at whether I should be a Chapter S, whether I should be a regular C, whether I should just be an LLC, and etc., we can give you the name of some attorneys that you can talk and decide upon yourself what kind of legal structure you have. And if y'all know this, you can operate as a subchapter S, and next year you can switch to a subchapter to a regular C corporation. 2 years after that, you can go from a C back to a subchapter S if you want. As long as it's done legally and etc. Your legal structure just tell us what your tax situation is. And so we can recommend you. So there's some great attorneys that can discuss with you legal structure. They can even help you in your incorporation if you need to be incorporated, those type of things. Yes.
Okay, Stephen asks, my company is a distributor of a unique and patented technology for chemical-free water conditioning and treatment. I have an idea and concept on how to clean the water tanks out in the field of cattle, ranchers, farmers, etc. I need money to engineer this concept into reality and test. So research and development funds, what are your thoughts on those?
Well, those are tough to get. Those are some things where what's the collateral? And what if the tests don't bring any sales? When you're talking about improving the patent, improving the technology, marketing the product, that's where a lot of people, how much skin in the game do you have? Do you think a lot about your product? Then I would think that you'd be putting in as much money as you can. I've looked at marketing plans and marketing strategies, and we have lent some money, but I've taken other collateral. I've taken 2 cars, or I've taken a black and white TV. You got to have some skin in the game, no matter what you're asking for. And sometimes I can tell you what, I just did another one for $300 and some thousand, and the son and daughter did not have anything, whatever. I got the father-in-law to drive down from Minnesota, and he co-signed the loan, okay, because he was retired, had a good pension, whatever. So my thing is trying to find out how I can get you to the next level of what you're trying to do. I'm not here to judge whether you have a good business or not, whether your patent is a good patent. I'm here to try and say, if you need to get to this level here, this is what it's going to take, and this is what you need, because the last thing, what am I going to do with research information if you can't pay me? Not a thing.
And Stephen brings up a interesting question here. He says he's not a minority. Does he still qualify for a loan?
Oh yeah, we're not just a minority lender. We lend to anybody over here. We're a small business lender, and whether you're black, brown, green, or red doesn't make any difference to me. Financial statements are agnostic. When I look at a financial statement, I don't know whether you're black, blue, Native American, whatever, until I turn over and it tells me. So you need to understand that when I'm looking at a statement, say, well, didn't you know I was black? No, I did not, till I read through the business plan. But your business plan still doesn't has some. So we're not a collateral lender. We're a cash flow lender. We do lend to business startups. We lend to people with some great ideas. I just looked at one now. A guy wanted $300,000 for this new prototype for hospitals, for anesthesiologists. Problem is he has no sales. He works out of the Santa Fe Business Incubator over there, and we're trying to negotiate how we can get him some money. He has a sister who's part of the business who's pretty well off, and we might be able to take her signature and get him some money. But the last thing I want is 25 of those prototypes sitting in my office because I can't do anything with them. So those are things that we have to think about with small business.
And you do loans beyond small business administration loan guarantees, right? You have your own funds.
Yeah, here's the thing. I'm glad you mentioned that. We don't get SBA guarantees. Okay, we're not an SBA lender. We are an SBA micro lender. That's our own money. There's no guarantee on those loans. We do SBA 504 loans, but that's my money. Okay, with the CDC or the ELCDC is the 504. Okay, but I'm not an SBA lender. I don't get a guarantee on any of my loans. My guarantee is that I can find Chris, start up his 74 Mavic and drive it back to Albuquerque if I have to take it, and go from there.
Perfect. So let's see what Angela asks. How long does the loan process take?
As long as it needs to. I mean, that's the first question I get. What do you think, Leroy? How long do loans like this take? Well, let me see. Let me get my magic wand and let me find out, especially if you haven't given me everything I need. See, that's the problem is people come up and they give us their application and they start the clock. And then I look at the application, it's missing 6 things. It's no tax return. Personal financial statement is not completed. So-and-so is not done. Let me tell you how long it's going to take. So what we're doing right now, we're making sure that we're not taking in any applications that are not complete. I mean, we have people turn in their applications and they don't finish their personal financial statement. You want me to finish your personal financial statement? No, go to Chris. So here's the biggest problem. And that's a good, very, very good question. It takes as long as it takes, and if you only give me 6 things out of the 10 that I want, it's going to take a lot longer. But if you give me 10 things that I need within a week or 2, we'll get back to you. Like right now, I can tell you, right, I've got $2.8 million worth of loan applications in front of you right now, on top of my stove with my beans and chicos and my calabacitas, okay? At all stages. I'm waiting for something from the title company. On some of them, I'm waiting for an appraisal. On some of them, I'm waiting for the complete list of equipment that's going to be purchased with model numbers and serial numbers. So it just depends on what type of money you're looking for, what we're going to use for collateral, whether it involves a mortgage or not. Like I can tell you right now, we've got 3 of them at title companies. What used to take 4 weeks years ago is taking 8 weeks because of COVID at title companies, because they don't want you there unless you're closing, signing the documents. So I have 3 deals right now at title companies that have been there over 30 days. And so it just depends on the collateral, what we're taking for collateral, and what we have to do to secure our interest in the equipment or whatever it might be. Like when somebody comes and says, I want you to lend me money against my receivables. I go, wow, you got 400,000 in receivables. Yeah, the problem is 350,000 are over 90 days. If you can't collect them, how am I going to collect them and use them for collateral? Does that make sense? So sometimes we'll come up with a little structure that says, tell you what, Chris, I'll lend you 80% on anything under 30 days, 40% on anything over 60 days, and 10% on anything over 90 days, right? We'll try and find a way to help you. But if you can't collect your receivables, man, how are you going to pay me if I'm lending you against those receivables? So this is why it's good we're here to develop a relationship. We're just not a one-gun shot, here's a loan and go. Even though many times that one loan has gotten people to where they need to go. Sometimes we have people, and half of our portfolio have been borrowing from us for 30 years. Susan Matucci has borrowed from us for 25 years. I can tell you some of the others that have been borrowing from us for 15 or 20 years. And they don't need to go to the bank because we're providing them what they need, the working capital they need, the fuel for their business. They're controlling their costs, and we're getting up-to-date financial information on a timely basis. If you're not keeping up with your finances, it's real hard for us to help you. You come over, I need some help, where? And then I get people come in, who's doing your financials? Oh, my wife's helping me. Tell her not to help you because she's not helping you. Let us get you with a bookkeeper. So many times it's the wrong people doing the wrong things that we need before we look at a deal. So one of the things we do all the time is sit down and find out who your key players are for your business. Find out what your needs are. Are you a cash? I mean, are you a restaurant? Are you a welder? Are you a contractor? Every business has a different cash flow. And that's what we look at when you come and see us.
Perfect. I have another question from Alexi. She has a FICO score of 644. What would interest look like on a FICO score like that?
FICO scores just pretty much tell me how you pay your P&M bill and your Verizon bill. It doesn't tell me whether I can put a $100,000 loan into your cash flow. Does that make sense? And I put $100,000 loans into cash flow for people with 800 credit scores and 450 credit scores. And they've all paid because it isn't a matter of the credit score. If you look at your credit bureau right now, it tells you how you pay your Sears, your P&M, whatever. It may not show that Nusenda, maybe it'll show your Nusenda or your Rio Grande credit car loan or whatever like that. But when you're talking about your business, credit score, yeah, if I see your credit bureau and you're walking away from people and you got collection items, I don't want to be the next one on there. Do you know what I mean? I'm telling Christopher, go straighten these out before you come and see me, right? Or if I find out that it's all collection items, I'm not going to touch you, straighten it out before. But I have made loans. I can tell you what, we've made loans for people with 450 and 500 credit scores because maybe they've been affected by a death in the family or a horrific healthcare issue. I mean, I've seen some credit scores drop 300 points because the main person got hurt and is in the hospital forever, right? Can't pay the bills. So you have to really look at the credit score and the credit bureau. We run a credit bureau right away and take a look at it. If you're running away from debt, it's going to show. If you're having some problems, it's going to show. And we discuss those problems. And sometimes we'll lend money to pay those bills to get you current and say, look, I'm going to pay off your 18% credit cards. And I want you to rip them up. And I want you to keep just one of them over here at 5%. So we also try and improve your financial capability, improve the capability. If you make tortillas, do you want to make 10 tortillas? Do you want to make 20? What is it going to take to make you? Do you need one more person? How much cash do you need to hire, Christopher, to do this end of it? So those are the things we're pretty good, Christopher, I think, with your help and others, pretty good financial doctors on structuring what you need. We are a gas station. We are a refueling stop. We take new businesses and make sure they have the right gas to get to where they're going. We take businesses that are expanding and go, whoa, have you thought of this here? We better give you this money on a line of credit with interest only for 1 year. Well, why would you do that? Because you can't pay $2,500 a month, but you can pay $1,000 a month till your sales go up, till you hire the right people, till you do your marketing strategy. So we have patient funding. That's like trying to collect from the farmers before they harvest the crop. You ain't going to get anything until those chilies come out of the ground. So if you can't wait for those chilies to come out of the ground, then you've structured that loan wrong.
And Alexi, I want to follow up to that. I think you should reach out to either SCORE, which is the Service Corps of Retired Executives, the SBDC, or a place like West, because they might have really low cost advertising and marketing options for you. So I would reach out to them before you take out a loan to do it. So we answered that one.
Yeah, look, research your money, research for your money. West has, West is known for their technical assistance, and et cetera, and small business loans. They're also an SBA micro lender, an SBA community lender also too. I've known Agnes for 30 years. Dreamstyle is also a good place to go to too. Ann Haynes Yaskowitz, they have lenders there that are really, really good. They've been there in business almost 24 years, 25 years or so. Search for your monies when you're looking for, again, if you're looking money for a marketing plan, are you buying the marketing plan? Or are you doing the marketing plan? Or you're looking for money to live on while you do your marketing plan? Because that's different. If you're trying to borrow money so that you can live on while you develop your marketing plan, those are going to be hard monies to try and borrow, unless you've got a Lexus to give me for collateral or something or other. But if you wanted money to do research and development, to do some things, you need to understand, what are you putting up for collateral? How long do you need it? What is going to be the results of a good marketing plan? Is the marketing plan you need for your business? I think you should sit down with a Chris Garcia and somebody and talk about what you really need for your business. I mean, are you trying to do something that you think will help you get money for your marketing business, or you're just trying to need money to develop a marketing plan? Because the SBDCs, SCORE, we sponsor the SCORE workshops. If you take a look at that, we sponsor every workshop every month for the year, for the last number of years. We work with the SBDCs. We have our own technical assistance. If you're an SBA micro loan lender here, we provide free technical assistance for you. I can get you a website designer. I can get you a marketing plan person to help you. And I might be able to get that if you're one of our micro loan borrowers. So research what West has available, Dreamstyle has available. There's others, few CDFIs, New Mexico Community Capital, Native American, et cetera, and research where you're getting your money and go talk to people.
Great suggestion. I have a question from Angela. How much collateral is needed on a loan?
As much as you have, as much as you can borrow, as much as you can get. Again, collateral is sometimes not the issue. It's how are you going to pay it back? What are you borrowing? Where's the money going to come from? Even if you have a line of credit today of $50,000 and I'm holding your 2022 Lexus, it's free and clear. I don't want your car, but if you can't keep up with interest only, I'm going to have your car. I don't want your tractor trailer rig. You know what I mean? So it's cash flow. You borrow the money, invest it in your business on a line of credit. That's what you do. But you better have a plan of when you're going to begin to start to pay it down or pay it back. And that's where I think is valuable, visiting with SBDCs like Chris, SCORE. Dart Johnson is a great mentor at SCORE. You know him, Chris, very well. He's on our board. He's on the Indian Chamber board. He's on the African American Chamber board with me also. There's a lot of great people out there at SCORE and at the SBDCs that can provide you some and answer some of the questions that you have on whether or not we lend on certain monies and et cetera.
I like to see 10% at least on a collateral and a loan, but that your program here and the other alternative lenders make it so that there's not barriers to a loan, which is, we appreciate that.
I agree that I think down payment and skin in the game is one of those. I mean, I've taken a chocolate making specialty shop after 8 years, and the $80,000 worth of equipment that we purchased for that equipment that's in the store, and I've gotten $3,500 for it when they shut the doors. So that'll tell you about collateral. If you can get 10 cents on the dollar, you're lucky. So I don't look at collateral. I'm taking a look at cash flow, and I'm trying to take a look to make sure that Christopher, whoever's borrowing the money, has enough working capital to keep doing what they're doing. But I can tell you a lock and key business at a truck and all the equipment that sat in my parking lot for over a year, over a year, that I had to drive back from Taos before I could find somebody to buy it. And I had a great loan to value on that one here. And I still lost $30,000 after I sold everything, So collateral is one thing, and it's always negotiable. I like strong cosigners. I like 2022 Lexuses and colored TVs. But I have toaster ovens and black and white TVs as collateral. So what can I tell you?
Michael asks, can you borrow under an LLC to have the credit reflect on the business instead of the owner?
Yes, we report to the Credit Builders Alliance, which is a separate credit agency for just businesses. Because you're exactly right. Sometimes your loans don't show up on your personal credit bureau, but we lend to LLCs, and we also report whether you're late or not to the Credit Builders Alliance, so that somebody can call up CBA and they can get a credit on a rating on your business, or they can just call me directly. If I lend money to you, have your vendor or somebody else out there call me directly, and I'll tell them how you're paying me.
Do you require a personal guarantee, or can a business itself take out the loan?
Yes. I don't care if you're a corporation or subchapter S regular C. If you're not willing to sign it personally, sorry, because if you're president of a certain corporation and you get fired or you leave, who signed the note? Because the president of the corporation doesn't exist anymore. So who do I collect from, right? So yes, we usually have you sign as Christopher individually, and Christopher president or vice president, whatever you are. Yes.
Perfect. Errol asks, do you set up revolving credit that can stay open but help those through difficult times?
Yeah, we right now probably have, I told you, about $5 million worth of lines of credit. And some have zero balances. Some are drawn to the top. Some seasonal. During the winter months, they're doing whatever they're doing. So their line of credit goes up, goes down, goes up. And then all of a sudden they harvest a crop or sell a piece of equipment or something like that, and they pay us down. So we have revolving lines of credit. We issue them for 1 year, renewable every year. They're interest only. And then we watch how you use it. It's an in and out line. If I find people and they borrowed $100,000 and a year later they still owe me $100,000, you didn't need a line of credit, man. You needed paid in capital. You needed something. So, but we help you. We help you. Before you call me up and say, I want $50,000 in my account, I'm going to ask you, what's it for? Where are you using it? When are you going to pay me back? It's an in and out line of credit. We also educate people on how to use in and out lines of credit. It's like a credit card, and you pay interest on what's outstanding. Can you pay more than just the interest every month? Yes, you can. And so we try and tell people, and I have about 8 or 10 that have borrowed money, and it's been, Christopher, maybe a year and a half, and they have done nothing but pay interest. That's got to tell you something in your business, right? If you're only able to just service the interest, well, I've been paying you. You're not paying me. You're just borrowing money, and you owe me $100,000, and you haven't reduced it for a year and a half. So that we need to sit down and talk with you about what's happening. Look at your margins and find, are you making any money? Christopher, I've sat down with some people and I go, look, when are you going to get tired of it costing you $1.05 to make $1? Well, what do you mean? Well, come over here. Let me show you how the buildup on your credit cards, the accrual on your taxes. There's some things that we know what to look at that can tell me. If I look at your aging of receivables and I see things in the 60, 90, and 120-day category, it's got to be affecting your cash flow, right? It's got to be affecting your line of credit because you don't have that money. Accounts receivable is a dirty word. Somebody owes you money. I'd rather have the cash. So we help people learn how to read their financials. We help people learn how to manage and control their costs. We go and look at liquidity. We look at debt to worth. Then we go to the income statement and look at your margins. Especially now with the restaurants, Christopher, we're spending a lot of time saying, give me your last 3 years. Now give me this last year. Look at what your food costs are. Look at what your salaries are now. We need to adjust your prices. We have about 10 restaurants right now that all we're working on right now is trying to find out how much they should be charging for that chimichanga, right?
Is that why my chicharron burrito costs $13 now?
Look at this, man. I'm telling you what, man, right? So this is why people need to look inside. If you run a restaurant, anything where you're buying product and all this other stuff, if you better look at your prices to make sure, because if your prices have gone up 20, 30%, I mean, in your costs, if your labor has gone up even 10% or so, or 15%, and you haven't adjusted your prices, then you might be in one of those, what's called law of diminishing returns. You know what I mean? Every dollar is costing you $1.05. I had one client too that I've known for 30 years. And we had that discussion with him. He finally looked at me and goes, boy, you know, you're right. It's costing me more for my lumber. I better go update my GSA schedule. And what he'd done, he'd gone and updated his prices 2 years ago, and it didn't stick. So he was selling his same stuff to the federal government for the same prices as 2 years ago, because he didn't have the right prices in there. So I put one loan officer together, and we spent 2 days on GSA updating all his prices. Now he started to make some money. So we really, again, Christopher, we use the SBDCs and SCORE to be that financial doctor that even though you might be making great tortillas, cutting good hair, doing great welding, building good buildings, selling gas, serving good chimichangas, you really need to look at, this is why we ask for, bring us your financial statement so we can put your x-rays down and see if we notice anything. See if we can see some things that start to, wow, I noticed. I mean, we've had some people come in and go, they haven't paid their CRS for 3 years. For 3 years. And they wonder, do you think that's bad? Well, let me tell you what, you know, if I had the CRS back, and then they don't even have it on their financials, right? And they're under accruals, right? And so they have wrong financial statements. So we've helped people create better x-rays for themselves.
And it's just after 11 now, so I want to respect your time and everybody else's time. So I want to thank everybody for this attending the webinar. I want to thank you for always being available to our clients, and I'll give you any last words.
Christopher, again, someday, and I hope someday soon, that people appreciate what you do as an individual, not only as an organization with the SBDCs, but the passion that you have for small business, which is what I've had since I was born, growing up in that big metropolis of Mora, New Mexico. If y'all know where Mora is, right? I mean, my first 6, 7 years there till my dad took us to Los Alamos, right? Woo, they were nuking things in Los Alamos. I said, Dad, come in here. This apartment has this thing flushes. Wow, there's a shower here. Because when I was born, I thought everybody had an outhouse, a wood burning stove, and a well. Till I found out my dad was a great carpenter and moved us to Los Alamos, New Mexico. So me and my 4 brothers went to one of the best schools, but every weekend we're back in Mora, speaking Spanish, helping my grandma, my grandfather, bale hay, cut wood, go to the outhouse, take care of the cows and sheep, learning how to work, right, for Pacheco Brothers Mercantile. So this is the one last comment that I want to have. I think someday I hope you'll be appreciated for how you care about small business like we do. We've been here 30 years. We've lent out $113 million. I've got $2.5 million on my plate right now that we're going to close in the next 2 months. And I've already closed over 6 million, 7 million this year. Okay. So we're going to close, we think, $10 to $12 million again. And I have another 5.5 million just sitting, waiting for the applications. Does that make sense? So if you call us, make sure you got everything ready and get in line. It's like going to Albertsons and they go serving number 12 and you're holding number 34, you know? So get in line, Christopher, follow your instructions. If you need some help, go to the closest SBDC and get some guidance, go to a SCORE and look for your money everywhere you can in the state of New Mexico. Thank you again for the opportunity, Mr. Christopher. I enjoy my visits with you, and I hope those people that are listening right now, you've been writing things down, you have copies of what Christopher has sent you. Take a look at them, use them as resources and guidance. I love when people come and see me and they've got those 3 sheets of paper and they got check marks on them. And they said, you know what? My mom told me not to come see you unless I had everything ready to go. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Chris. And I'll let you go. And I'm here as long as you need me.
Thanks again. I'm going to end the webinar for all, and we hope to hear from you next year.
Gracias.
Bye-bye.